All right, go ahead.
All right. Well, welcome to this session of Empowered Learning 101. You're joined by Rebecca Bohman, which is myself, and Dustin Hertz. We're so happy to have you. This is it's a free service that Idaho Freedom Action is sponsoring myself in providing for all of these families that, especially this year where we're kind of struggling to figure out what to do with our kids' schooling. And many families are either homeschooling or they're kind of homeschooling with a school involved. But your children are home. But we really want to focus on empowering that learning, and so I'm grateful for them to support these classes. Today's session will be focused on managing multiple students. Last year when many schools shut down and we brought so many kids home, this was like the number one question that I got is, how do I manage all of these kids and all of their different needs? And I do have to say, if you're doing this with a public school system, it isn't easy because they want to separate everything out. And we can kind of talk about that and how to create maybe students that are a little more self-directed, and then how to manage. Sometimes you'll have babies and toddlers and things like that. And we're going to touch on those types of things as well. But first of all, like I said, we want to give a big thank you and shout out to the Idaho Freedom Action for sponsoring these classes. They're free. There's nothing spammy going to happen here. I'm really not going to sell you on a whole lot of stuff or on anything other than we are going to talk about what you can do as parents to maybe gain a little bit more control of your children's education. But really grateful for them to provide these free courses for you, and we will be doing them all through the school year. You'll be able to actually get the recordings as well. We'll talk about that as we move along. But first, just to introduce myself, my name is Rebecca Bohman. I am the mother of 4 great kids. I've been married for 26 years. I even have married kids now, but we schooled them all the way through. I started when my 2 youngest ones, before they were even born, accidentally, of course. I've done a lot of online schooling and now a lot of homeschooling as well. I'm also a podcaster. I am the host of The Luminous Mind, and a lot of content for these. I've reposted it there just so it's easy access. It can be found at theluminousmind.net. I don't know, Dustin, do we have anybody that has joined at all?
Not in the chat, so I'll just keep
Okay.
an eye on that. But yeah.
Well, I would like to try to tailor these to people who could use the message. I would love it if people could show up live so we could do some group introductions and handle your questions, that you have in a live situation. So if you're watching this by recording, please try to make an effort and join us live. Why don't we go ahead though, Dustin, and do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, since you're going to be moderating the chat.
Sure. My name is Dustin Hurst. I'm the Vice President of Idaho Freedom Foundation and Idaho Freedom Action here in Boise. I've been doing this work, the political work, and educating people about free market and limited government policies for about 10 years off and on. I'm doing different stuff, whether it's journalism or communications work. Now I'm got my hands in a little bit of everything. But more important than my day job is the fact that I'm a dad. I have 3 kids, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Who I love deeply and who I want to empower and give the best education to. And I've been studying homeschooling, or at least empowered learning, for a couple of years because I wasn't satisfied. I was a public school kid, and I understand that works for some people, but I wasn't satisfied with the education that I received in my schooling years, my public school years. And so I'm just thrilled to be doing these classes with Rebecca, and I'm learning a ton myself. I guess I did this a little selfishly because I know that Rebecca has a wealth of information to share to people. So thank you, Rebecca, for doing this with us, and I'm ready to go into another class and to discuss these ideas with you.
Awesome. And you're like the perfect candidate for this because you've got babies and toddlers with kids that you're schooling. So
Yeah.
this will make a lot of sense for you
Absolutely.
tonight. Well, last week's session, we talked about the more of those true and tried homeschooling secrets, how less is more. If you're interested in any of the recordings, you can go to theluminousmind.net. Like I said, I have a page there. I'm going to be loading up more videos of other classes as well. I also have the schedule there, and there's also a link that you can join these classes live with us on Zoom so that you can actually talk to us and interact with me as well. You can also go to the Empowered Education 101. We have a Facebook page that Dustin has been so kindly started for us, and we'll try to be more active on that as well. I'm posting the videos there, and there is a lot of advice. We got a few very tried and true, seasoned homeschoolers on there that are kind of helping us out with questions and different things on that Facebook page. So I always love to provide a resource page just so that you can continue to study these things that we're talking about and maybe help expand your own knowledge and understanding in these situations. We're going to talk about how the one-room schoolhouse approach actually got it right and the reasons to go back to that because of some of the situations that we're seeing now, as well as improvement in education. We're going to talk about a lot about helping our children become goal setters. I really pound this home because this is one of the most important reasons to do this style of education is the fact that it has the power to create self-directed learners if we use, our time to do that. Also, how to develop independent learners and why those skills are so important. There's going to be tips that we're going to give about babies and toddlers and preschools as they're all in the mix. And then a couple other websites that I think is really important to study is 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. I think sometimes if we can get our why, we can have our mission statement. It's really important. They have a really great worksheet on this particular website. Okay, at least I know in the past. I checked the link just to be sure, and it was there, but I'm not sure if that form is there, but I will check it. Maybe I'll post that every time I post one of these videos down in the comment section, I always put these resource links. If I can find that worksheet, it's really awesome. My family did it. It's one page, super easy. You could do it with little kids about what our family is about and where we want to go and what we want our family to look like. And it can help you build like a family mission statement, which I think is really powerful. We're also going to talk about using the EDGE method. I'm a scouter, so it's something that they do, but I think it's very critical in teaching our children how to do things. And how to be a self-directed learner for sure. Like I said, this session is called Managing Multiple Students. We're going to talk about helping our children set individual goals, how to encourage learning independence and mentoring among siblings. I remember Dustin talking about that a little bit. They haven't been homeschooling very long, but he's already seen that interaction going on between his kids. And then also learning with babies and toddlers. Before we get into this, is the only salesy part I'm going to do, and it's only because of our dire situation that we're in with COVID right now. I really feel like it's really important to be your child's learning advocate. It's breaking my heart to see all these families. I live in the Bonneville County area, and luckily there aren't a ton of schools that are closing down. I think District 91 is talking about going online again, which if you're not an online, it works for some people, but not for others. It's very hard to do it with the district as well. I remember last year when a lot of families went online, it just became a complete nightmare for them. But one thing I want you to really focus on is, first of all, notice how your kids are learning. Hopefully during this COVID time, we've taken that time to kind of think about how our kids are learning best, and be sure to tell your legislators about how they learn and maybe what would work best for them. And then also how your children are feeling right now, their current struggles. I spoke with a guest, on my podcast this week, and we talked about how a lot of times we get these fears ingrained with us in at a very young age, and they're hard to shake as we get older. And it really had me scared in a way for our future, because there is so much fear, and children, as they're growing up in this, with this fear, I just don't want it to be something that later on is going to cause a lot of problems for our society. We need the dollars to follow our children and our families. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk to Dustin.
Yeah.
They had a very important guest.
This
he had a very important guest.
Topic. Yeah.
Yes. Corey DeAngelis. He works for Reason Foundation, as well as, is he part of FEE? I'm trying to think.
No, he's written for FEE, and FEE always retweets him because Corey is a madman on Twitter.
He's amazing.
And it's amazing the traction he gets over there. So if you don't follow him, I think his Twitter handle is @DeAngelis Corey, and that's Corey with an E before the Y.
And you can find him on Facebook. I follow him there as well. But go ahead and tell us about that conversation that you guys had with him.
It was so good. Anna did a great job, and Corey is just fantastic. And I should know, Corey's just the most humble dude in the world.
He really is. He's awesome.
But he slays myths left and right like they're dragons. It's just amazing. But so Corey DeAngelis has been a longtime advocate of funding students and not systems, which means that basically whatever education works for your kid, as long as it's effective and it's credible and it's not fake or whatever, he's all about funding that. So that means homeschool, that means private school, that means public school if that's whatever, or deschooling, unschooling, whatever. And Anna and Corey, Anna Miller, the Idaho Freedom Foundation Ed Policy Analyst, just talked about that this week, or last week, I guess it was. And you can find their whole talk at youtube.com/Idaho Freedom TV. And what they really seized upon, and why we're doing this, is Idaho is really poised, is really in a good position to forward school choice. Now, education choice is like, Idaho is a great place for it. We don't have a lot of opt-outs. There's not a lot of paperwork. There's nothing like, I think we're in a really good place. And Rebecca can correct me if I'm wrong. She's advocated this for.
We really are.
Like compared to some of the states and like getting your kids out and, getting disclosures with the government or whatever, like we don't do any of that. It's fantastic. But the one place that we are left out, and most places are, is having those education dollars fund the students, not the systems. And a lot of people are like, well, this will ruin our public school system. And it's like, maybe the public school system will deliver a better product if the dollars follow the kids. And so what you're going to see, and what Anna and Corey talked about, is how we can best use our education dollars. Because at the end of the day, dollars, the idea in the Idaho Constitution that says, kids deserve and are entitled to a thorough education, it doesn't necessarily mean public schools. It means we deliver a great education to our kids. So what you're going to see over the next 5 months as we go into the 2021 legislative session is this huge battle between Education Inc., which wants to maintain the status quo, and people like us who want to think differently about education. And hopefully, at the end of that battle, the people who are on the right side of history, us, will come out on top, because we know that for all kids, affluent kids, low-income kids, minority kids, regular kids, choice works. And it inserts competition into our system, into a system where public schools can be lethargic and they don't have to be responsive to kids' needs because they don't have competition. It's like, it's like you see, like all over in the world, we benefit from market competition. Take your cell phone carriers. If you don't like Verizon, you go to T-Mobile. I don't even know if T-Mobile is still around. I think they merged with Sprint. Maybe they are. You don't like T-Mobile? Go to Boost. You don't like Boost? Go to Walmart. Whatever. You can leave. And what we saw even this week with the West Ada Teachers Union thing, the teachers union has so much power. They said, we don't feel safe with COVID, in our schools and blah, 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 blah. So they shut down the schools by calling in sick and illegally, what we think is an illegal strike. Okay, that's great. Imagine if the parents upset by those people, by that strike, could take their education dollars elsewhere. That would be fantastic, and that's what we hope to achieve in the next legislative session. So, again, go to youtube.com/Idaho Freedom TV to watch that entire chat. Those two are way more articulated about it than I am, even though, I've got kids or whatever. But, they do a great job, and I hope everyone goes and watches that.
Yes. And I will be sure to post that on the Facebook page as well. The Empowered Learning 101 Facebook page that we have. One of the things, though, we're talking about how the dollars follow the children, but let's talk about how, if the dollars follow the children, how a teacher could branch off and have their own school.
So
Corey DeAngelis has talked about that.
Gosh.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
The left and the media and stuff, they have a monopoly on thinking that the left is better for teachers. That's not true. So think about it this way.
There are many teachers that do want to be working. I've talked to a lot of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And think about this. There's a concept that I think it's the AERI or AEI. I don't remember. There's some right wing or conservative think tank that came up with the idea of charter teachers, which is that families can hire district approved, now I don't love that part, but district approved teachers directly. So think about that. So Idaho spends about $9,000 per kid, depending on the district or whatever. So say it's $8,000 per kid. A lot of that goes to overhead, right? Buildings, buses, janitors, mop buckets.
A huge administration that's telling you how to do your job.
So what if, we give each family $8,000? 8 families or 10 families can band together and hire one teacher for 10 kids and pay that teacher $80,000 a year. Tell me that's not better for the teacher. It is. It absolutely is.
And you've got your smaller class sizes. Those teachers those students individually.
Yep.
Sometimes you can follow them through year after year, which is a huge help.
And I guess people would say, well, where are they going to meet? There's lots of places for them to meet. They can, you could rent out space using a chunk of that money. Add in one more kid, you have $8,000. Rent out a space for $4,000. It shouldn't even cost that much. You can go meet at the local library. You can meet in people's homes. If you think differently about this, there are a lot of the world is open to you. But we're stuck in this narrative that, learning has to happen in these square classrooms with these, you need to break this narrative, and it's going to happen. It's slowly happening. But I think that you're going to see that accelerate over the next 5 months.
And the last session that we did, I kind of just went off on this big dream thing. Back east, they have places called learning centers. I would love to see 1,000 of those crop up where kids, you could just pay like a monthly membership thing, and you could have teachers there and available to help children. But they have the option, which I think we want to create these self-directed kids, but they have the option to kind of pick and choose the classes they want to go through, and they can learn a lot of different skills. I think about welding and auto mechanics, and you name it. Economics, those types of things. It could be amazing.
And I want to add to that. So my brother's how do I say wealthy? He's affluent, if you will. He's very successful. He runs a small business. He's in the West Ada School District. He lives out in Star. During all of the shutdown, he's infuriated. He's furious over the shutdown and the mismanagement by the school board, and rightly so. But my brother has the resources to send his daughter to a private school, or to do what we're talking about, hire a teacher for 10 kids or whatever, because he has the resources.
Wealthy people already have school choice.
They do.
Why don't we give it to poor families?
Let's extend it to every single family in the state of Idaho, and let them.
Let's help out teachers along.
Yep, and we can do it. But, But the biggest lobby in the state of Idaho is Education Inc., because the biggest slice of the budget is public education. I want to say it's like $1.3 billion state dollars go to public education. And I just think we can do it differently, but the people who believe in this and who believe in smashing the current system that wasn't designed for the modern economy that we live in, you got to be ready for a dogfight, because the unions are, they
It's
see what's coming, and they know that they're going to have to brawl, and we've
but
got to be ready.
one of the reasons why I think it's very important that parents get involved, I've spent a lot of time like this. When my kids first started homeschooling, we used a program called K-12 that actually the state didn't fund for 3 years. They wouldn't fund them. It was the company that carried it through and allowed it to happen. It was just a charter school that opened up. It was a great online school. And in fact, if you have to go online, go with somebody who's done it for decades.
Yeah.
But because us families realized how important that was, and there's some pictures of us here, we got together and I've been working on legislation in Idaho for a long time. But I hear from legislators all the time that they listen to a parent that takes the effort to call them so much more than they do a teachers unions, because they know many of the teachers unions are, first of all, paid. And if you make the effort to contact your legislator, to talk to them about these issues, they're more likely to listen to you. Some of them are in the pocket of the union, but there are many of them, if there's a big enough outcry, they're going to really make an effort. So one of the reasons why I mentioned teachers is that we want to talk about the one-room schoolhouse. You're hearing a lot about micro schools or pod schools. It's exactly the very same thing, really. And one of the things that blew my mind when I first started homeschooling is that the traditional public education is actually a very new invention. For decades before then, many families would already create these micro schools or these pod schools, these one-room schoolhouse situations where a group of families would get together, they would hire a teacher. From the very beginning, I think it was like back in the 1860s or something, when they started forcing parents to educate their kids through a compulsory education system. And it wasn't because those children weren't learning. In fact, there was a 95% literacy rate. Children,
Wow.
if you think about our nation's founding, have you ever read the actual document Common Sense?
It was a long time ago, but
Well,
yes, it's fantastic.
It is, and it is not an easy read.
No.
Now it's considered college level reading. Many of these families that had been basically homeschooled or in these micro schools, they could easily read Common Sense. And that's why it spurred the whole, American Revolution, because of something that was written like that.
Right.
So obviously these are not stupid people. And that's what I was told, is that public schools had to be started because children weren't learning how to read. They weren't learning. That's not true at all. What ended up happening, and maybe I'll post this on that Facebook page too, because I have some very good resources for this, is that they wanted children to be educated so that they could run the factories, but not too educated, because many of what they found is people were too entrepreneurial. They wanted to be out, owning their own life and having that freedom. And they wanted to be able to somewhat control them to the point that they were happy working in factories. So just a small little lesson. But one of the ways that the one-room schoolhouse got this approach right is that they had multi-age classrooms. If we think of the bullying problems in schools nowadays, part of the reason is because there's this pecking order, and you have all these children that are the same age trying to compete for who's the best. And then what you end up having is a huge bullying problem. A lot of times, a great resource for this, and I should have put it on the resource page, but I've mentioned him so many times, Peter Gray, Free to Learn. He has talked a lot about multi-age classrooms and the benefits of those.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but I would just interject. John Taylor Gatto, I know that you've read him. He's written a lot about this too. And Connor Boyack took one of Gatto's books and made it into one of his Tuttle Twins books. So look up John Taylor Gatto and the Tuttle Twins. When I first read John Taylor Gatto, I thought this guy is a little over the top. I was like, nah.
Yeah, you're like, he's a little crazy.
Like when you're introduced, it's like, okay,
because
sure.
you were public school.
Exactly. And then I started thinking about it, and then I watched, I started about a year and a half ago, and I started watching, and I started studying and thinking about my kids' education, what they were learning and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. It just completely shattered my paradigm. on public education. I was like, okay, it's
And
time
he was a New York City public educator, and he was like, I can no longer hurt children.
Well, and not only that, like, it wasn't like he was just like, because it's like, okay, so some random teacher. No, this
was a
guy
highly
was,
decorated.
He won like Teacher of the Year, like, I want to say 2 or 3 times. Like, he knew his stuff, and then he just was like, nope, no more. He blew the whistle.
Yes.
Can't do it. So read John Taylor Gatto.
Yeah, and he actually tried to create these multi-learning experiences, more experiential learning, which we've talked a lot about. But basically in the multi-roomed classroom, sorry, I switched the page accidentally. In the multi-room classroom, what we found is that instead of rather sticking to, grade classrooms, there were multi-ages. It provides built-in tutoral opportunities of young students, and then an automatic review for older students. So really the information was always fresh, it was always new, it was or it was something that was being reviewed all the time, and so the information really stuck with kids. And then there was a greater role model relationships as well, because a lot of times adults worked more hand in hand with kids versus just a mass amount of kids and 1 or 2 teachers in the classroom. They were also very community friendly. They pulled students back into their own neighborhoods, and they created little hubs where the young and the old were there to bond, and it helped reduce discipline problems because there was more opportunity for them to interact and get to know each other, and more mentoring opportunities for young people as well. They received better instruction because with the community nature, the teachers had the potential to really know their students better, and they could craft the learning to individual needs, and the smaller groups meant that those children had more attention. Also, there was a big separation between school and sports. And I know this is a really touchy subject for many people. And not that I don't think that sports is important, but it drives a lot of the cost of public education. And we have these mega schools now that are being funded by huge bonds that I have no idea how we're going to pay for them in the future, but especially if the economy keeps going like it is. But, that has these mega sports teams and facilities. And BYU Idaho, actually, it was interesting what they did when they became a 4-year university. And this, I think you could do. You could create mural sports teams. A lot of times we build these mega schools for just a handful of kids to be able to get the opportunity to actually participate in any type of sport. Yeah, sure, kids get PE classes or they get whatever, but they are not necessarily part of a team. And it'd be awesome to see more of an like an intramural situation going on where kids have that opportunity. All kids have that opportunity.
I watch these, I don't know, I've seen there's it's almost like there's an arms race going on between some high schools. Like, for example, a couple years ago over in your neck of the woods, Madison, I don't remember who went first, but Madison built this like Taj Mahal high school, and then Jefferson built one.
Which is a tiny little school district. Yeah, but it's like, it was ridiculous.
You actually go look at the stadium, the design, like, and look, I'm not a design architect or whatever, but like I look at the design, it's like this big giant like artwork, and like it's super fancy, and I'm like,
well, and they went way over budget. Yeah. They went way over budget. They couldn't finish it. But they wanted to go back for another bond. And the parents were like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And then Idaho Falls did the same thing. The district that I was in, they built a big, huge monolithic school too. So yeah, it becomes a very competitive thing for sure, because everybody wants a nicer building.
And I can tell you, by the way, so I remember in my high school experience, just as an aside, anecdotally, I played high school football, right? And in between my sophomore season, I started playing football for the high school team, and they were building a new stadium for us. It wasn't super fancy, but it was like a couple $1,000,000. We still won like 2 games every season, so it doesn't help. And I don't know that it helped my character either to have a better football field or whatever. And the arguments about economic drivers they're all hogwash, completely hogwash.
Hmm.
So just
And
want to throw that out there.
and why have segregation going on in schools? And we do have segregation going on when a child can only attend that school if they belong to that zip code and
Yeah.
that area. And I think that is it zip code? It's actually, yeah,
Yeah,
zip
it's zip
code.
code. It's zip code,
Okay.
and there may be, it may not be exactly like following the idea of a zip code, but there are lines drawn
Hmm.
by local
Yeah.
officials. So that's
And I
that's a
know
thing.
when they built the big monolithic school, out here in Bonneville where I was at, many parents wanted their children to go there, and they had to restrict how many could come, because of that. And that would be one of those situations, if the money starts following the child, you could possibly send, if that's the school you wanted your kids to go to, they could go there and there would be no zip code, requirement for sure. So let's talk about how to create these one-room schoolhouse situations. It really is a phenomenal learning environment for your children. First of all, it happens often with homeschooling families or community groups. And that's what we're seeing crop up quite a bit. I belong to a great association here called iFamily. It's iFamily Leadership Academy. But there's many of these types of groups all over. Unfortunately, with COVID, we're not really doing a lot. But what the cool thing is now that these groups are formed, many of these families are grouping together and they're doing a history class at their house with a history teacher, or they're doing, a science thing with this teacher, or, so it is going on. They're just small little groups, one-on-one, well, not one-on-one, but a lot of instruction that's in very much smaller sizes. You want to mix learning as much as possible in this one house. And this is where that mixed age situation comes in. You can learn science and history and art and music. You can take a lesson and be able to make it fit for younger children as well as older children. And this is a great opportunity for, like we talked about, some of that mentoring to go on with older students and with younger students. And the cool thing is when you do that, you see kids actually interested in these subjects. I've seen it over and over and over again. Of course, reading, maybe, math, sometimes those you have to do more customized for your kid because you want them a little bit, kind of staying up, not that there's a pace, but it's customized for your child, for those older kids. But I'm not saying you can't do math with, or reading with other kids. My little 4-year-old, my youngest, or my second boy, learned how to read when my first boy was reading, just sitting under the car playing, or sitting under the table playing with his cars. Also, let older kids mentor younger kids as much as you possibly can. I think that's really key. It takes a lot of pressure off you as the parent, for sure, or the teacher. But the more that you can do that, you give a lot of leadership skills to these older students. And then they listen. It seems like little kids listen much better to maybe a person that's a year or two older than them than they would even to their own parents. And it creates a lot of, discipline problems kind of go away a little more. You also, maybe you want to think about balancing some time with online assignments and book work, because that really helps too when you're managing multiple students, that you're able to kind of, get one kid going with a class while you're helping somebody with book work. And I do think there's a lot of value in a lot of online learning. Like my daughter tonight was struggling with scale, how to figure scale. And she's like, the kids were noisy, and in the, while as a teacher was trying to explain it, I couldn't figure it out. So we turned on Khan's Academy. I don't know if anyone knows about him, but they have great math tutorials. She's able to watch it and she understood it really well. So there is a lot of great programs that can help, online programs that can help parents as well. I really think headphones is a must for any individual learning sometimes, because especially if you're dealing with babies and toddlers, they might be fussing or whatever in the background. It just helps students be able to listen a little bit better. But you really need to just change that paradigm of what you think education looks like. And I think we've kind of pounded it home tonight with the stuff with Corey DeAngelis, as well as this idea about the one-room schoolhouse and what this can do for parents or for teachers as well, most importantly. One of the things I think that really helps drive, makes managing multiple students easier is really teaching some goal setting skills. I didn't realize that as I was homeschooling, these types of skills were actually more vital than any curriculum or any, educational resource that we could ever use. The fact that my kids learned goal setting because, they had to be driving their goals, because I didn't have the time or the energy to be driving my kids and their goals all the time, especially when you have multi-level, learning. That's very individualized. So some of, these are 7 steps basically to teach kids some goal setting. And there are going to be classes that we're going to dive into these a little bit deeper later on. So I'm not going to go into them a lot more. We've talked about them some, but just helping kids dream about their goals, helping them, well, first of all, understand what a goal is, helping, share your own goals with your kids and your own aspirations. And, a lot of times kids want to, you become a good mentor for them for that. Help them with their dream list of what they're wanting. And sometimes kids make up really huge goals. Like, I want to be a professional basketball player. Just go with it, because eventually, I really feel like sometimes as parents, we think like, oh, he's saying he wants to do this now at 6 and this is what's going to happen. No, I've seen it enough. The kids will change and they'll move and they'll grow into who they need to be, better than we could. But the more that, or better than we could guide them to, but the more that we dive into those goals with them, we teach them some of these skills for sure. Help them think through those steps of success. Help your children understand how to track their goals, and then be sure to celebrate anytime your kids hit any of those tiny little goals for sure. So the biggest thing I think we can do to help with the multi-age learning situation, being able to school, kids of all different ages, is to try to create independent learners. I think this is vital. This is something that will stick with them forever. I watched my son as he went off to Russia. He just was just soaking it all in, just breathing it in. And that was one of his biggest frustrations, is that he was wanting to learn and grow and see everything. And he was with children that weren't raised like that. And it became very frustrating for him because, they were like, well, we have a job to do. This is our objective and this is what's got to be done. But they weren't like soaking in the culture. But I think that came a lot from the way that we raise them to be independent learners. Just to put it simply, independent learning is when the pupil starts to set their own goals. They start to monitor and evaluate their own academic development. And so that helps manage their own motivation towards learning. I think it is so difficult to always be pushing. This lifestyle can get exhausting if you are a parent who has pushed and pushed and pushed. It's not sustainable over the long run. So you want to do as much as you can to put the learning back on your child's shoulders. Sometimes as parents, we're afraid, like we have so many fears of like being the bad parent or looking, our kids will be stupid or they won't, whatever. And so we think that, and we get all worried and stressed about it, but we're worrying about it so much that it's making them not worry about it, which I think that can go along. And then the kids just, well, mom's got this handled. She's got she's doing all the worrying for me. I don't have to. So be sure to put that on their own.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just read, I don't know if you've read Alfie Kohn. I love Alfie Kohn. There's a book called Unconditional Parenting, and I don't remember the studies because I'm not that guy. Mm-hmm. But I remember there was one chapter where he said that the more, and it's all well-intentioned, so don't hate me for using this verbiage, but like the more overbearing and controlling and directive you are as a parent. Now there has to be some, I get that, but like the more you are, the less your kids will develop their own skills to stand up for themselves, set their boundaries, set their goals, and navigate and direct their own life, because they will. And this goes to public schools too. This is why I love self-directed learning and homeschool learning, is because, like, I don't want to control my kids' life. I want them to live their lives. And there are some parameters. Obviously, they're going to bed at a certain time. They are going to, eat food every day. It's a thing they're going to do. But beyond that, I want them to be able to internally, without social pressures and stuff, and doing stuff just because it checks boxes, I want them to drive their own lives. And this is so critical. So read Alfie Kohn, Unconditional Parenting, for that. It's fantastic. And there you go.
Okay, I'm making notes so that we can get this on the Facebook page as well.
Yeah, we're really not
great resources.
Yeah, every class we recommend like 40 books or whatever. We're not selling books. Like, we make no money off this. It's just like there's so many good books out there, and that one was so, like, I like to read really important books that shift my mindset or just bust my narrative. That was one of those. So make sure if you care about this, read that book.
Well, and that's really why we give so many resources, is that I think you have to do your own learning so you can come to these ideas all on your own. I can spout all of these things about how good it's going to be for your kids, but if you're not bought into the learning, this is an hour-long session. This is a lifetime of changing or deschooling. We talked about that in like our first session or something. About it takes a long time to kind of get yourself, if we're talking about kids that get indoctrinated, I was indoctrinated, to tell you the truth. I felt like this is the way that it had to be done. And it has taken me literally 16 years to kind of come to this. So, and I want you to get there on your own too, because it's not, don't take my word for it, take, your own way for it as well.
Yep.
So this EDGE method, this is one thing I learned in scouting. I think this is really helpful to help create independent learners. And the EDGE method, like I said, we're going to have other classes that we're going to really dive really deep into. It is basically explain to the child, demonstrate how to do it, guide them through it, where you kind of take a step back, but you're still guiding them through it, and then enable them, give them a chance to do it on their own. I think it's really important. The more that we can do that with our children, the more they learn how to do these skills, and they could take a lot of pride in it. So, are you using the EDGE method? What is your method for teaching your children, trying to strive to be independent? My job as a parent is hopefully to become obsolete, in their lives. I look at my married son and I'm like, I'm proud of the fact they're doing these things. They're telling me about the vision board they were going to make. And I'm like, I haven't even talked to you about that. This is awesome. Anyway, but it's just neat to see, to come to that point in your life. And I hope that's all of our goals. How are you teaching goal setting? How are you giving your children time and space to look for their own answers? Sometimes I felt bad that I was with a baby or I was with a toddler and helping them, and I couldn't be right there to find the answer for my son. But I learned that they really did learn how to find their own answers. And it really does help managing multiple students. I've actually had a harder time with my youngest because, for one, I'm sad that this is going to be over because it's been an amazing part of my life. But for another, because he's the only one, I find myself helping him too much. And really this year, we're kind of moving into that independent learning. Why is independent learning so important? It's important because students that explore for themselves, a student exploring for themselves is at the very core of learning. They're not really learning if they're just being told what to learn all the time. They're learning to love learning and becoming lifelong learners. They're wonderfully rewarded, wonderfully rewarding for learners, as well as an incredible life tool to learn how to be an independent learner. It improves academic performance because they're driving this. They have the motivation to do it. It increases that motivation. It increases their confidence because they feel like I'm a big person. I've got, I can do this kind of thing. It increases chances to be creative and intellectually stimulated. I always like to say illuminated learning, because it's stuff that just drives you so much that you don't want to stop. It helps foster social inclusion because they're people who have stuff that they can talk about, and they're intelligent, that kind of thing. It increases opportunities for completing personal goals. And I think really that's so important to teach children who can be really great goal setters. We want to talk about being that consultant parent versus a teacher mentality. I've talked about this before. Sometimes it's very natural when we want to bring our kids home. All of a sudden, we find ourselves being like a public school teacher. And we want to be sure that we kind of stay in this consultant role, that we're their help, we are there to help them. Help them learn how to find their own answers. What is your why for doing this? Your why one of them should be that your children can do this education or learn without you around. You want to endorse learning from mistakes, and try to create a situation that's really stress-free. I think we can create situations where kids can feel like they can make mistakes. They're going to do so much better in being confident in taking over their learning, for sure. Let kids create their own interests, their own life goals. And sometimes we try to live vicariously through our kids, and it creates, we just watched the Dead Poet Society with my daughter, and she's 16, and it was really interesting for her to watch that show and to watch how the one main character, his dad just wanted him to be a doctor the whole time. And it created a strife in their family. And then it created just a kid he ended up, I don't want to spoil it, but it wasn't a good ending. Let's just say. Anyway, let kids create their own interests. One of the things that I really learned, because I was not a very good student growing up. In fact, when I started homeschooling, some of my siblings were like, "Are you sure you can do this?" Because school was for me an all social thing. And your family starts to go, okay, you're not smart enough to do this. And so the cool thing is when I started with IDV, I had a wonderful teacher, and she was a lot older. She was actually came from a one-room schoolhouse that she told me about. And that's kind of what spurred my whole interest in that. But she talked about how she had one mother who wasn't even a high school graduate, because she was a humble person who was learning along with her children, she opened up a safe place for these kids to learn, because she didn't feel like she had all the answers. So there was a lot of humility there. And this teacher told me that was actually one of her best learning coaches, because she had a lot of humility, that she wasn't super smart, and a humble learning coach. So if you never feel like you're smart enough to do this, sometimes those are the best teachers, or the best person to supervise this kind of thing. Did you have something you wanted to add? Because you seem...
No, I just I don't know, it's just amazing. And this is kind of off topic, but kind of not. It's just there are so many people who, because they didn't do well in public school, they think they're not smart enough, or they didn't graduate college and they're not smart enough, or they got a 2.0 GPA, they're not smart enough. And I just don't, that's not...
Well, and for me, it becomes... I actually have a bachelor's degree. I'm not a stupid person. I worked my way through school. I actually loved college, and
Right.
I got like 3.5 all the way through college, But I think for me, it came from doing poorly on tests as a young kid. It built in my mind that I was stupid. And like I said, my family watched me in high school, and they're like, "Are you sure?" But like I said, why did I not feel like I was competent? I had gone through the whole system. I'd done 12 years of schooling. Why would I not think I was competent to teach my own children? And I think a lot of it comes from we have this expert mentality, and I think that in a lot of ways that's a mistake to think that.
I think again, I just want to tell just a quick story, because we get so used to using these cultural markers as signs of intelligence. So I love my job here at IFF, right? I got a 4-year degree because I was like, I've got nothing better to do with my life, so let's go get a communication degree at Boise State, which basically taught me nothing. But here I am doing communication and political science, which is what I want to do. But my older brother, he got a 2-year degree at North Idaho College and decided that he was done. he makes probably 2 or 3 times what I make. If that's the yardstick that you want to use to measure success, and I'm not sure that that's a great one, but it's the one I'm using for this story, I suppose. My little brother went to BYU, Idaho, and just decided he didn't want to do all the extra crap that was required to get a college degree at BYU, Idaho. Nothing against the school. It's just he decided, and a lot of kids are deciding, by the way, that all the extra, like, history, the social justice stuff that you're required to take now to get a college degree just wasn't for him. He wanted to code. So what did he do? He went out and he taught himself code. He actually he went and did the like alarm salesman and thing in Miami and Portland to fund it, but he taught himself 5 or 6 different coding languages. Now I know that he makes 2 or 3 times what I make. I have a 4-year degree. He has no degree. He's super successful in his way. I'm super successful in my way, at least. So I just, let's not use these cultural markers that have been set up for us as measuring sticks to determine intelligence or success or whatever. Yeah. You can be successful without a 4-year degree. You can be successful even if you sucked in high school. That's okay.
Yeah.
As long as I think it's more about your grit, your perseverance, and your willingness to do hard things and to work a little bit harder than the next guy.
Well, and I've had friends that have been 4.0 students and thinking that they had the path to the easy life. And so either way, it can set us up for failure. If you're not a good student, that can set you up for failure. And if you are a great student, sometimes that sets you up for failure.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say, like, even if you are successful and you, going back to what you said, I think on the last slide, like, there's a book called, I just read all the time, so sorry. But, like, there's a book called Excellent Sheep.
I like this.
And it's called Excellent Sheep, and it's about how all these really smart kids are on track. They're like the high achievers at Harvard and Yale. I think the author was an administrator or something at Yale or Harvard, one of the two. Anyway, he said, like, these kids, they do all the successful things, but they hate it. They hate what they're doing with their lives because they don't want to be lawyers. They don't want to be consultants. They don't want to be doctors. They want to go do other stuff, but their parents expect it of them, and they don't really love learning because they're just spending so much time doing it. So go read that book because it just shows you that we believe a lot of things that just aren't true about education. And it's startling. And a lot of lives are being ruined because we don't accept people for who they are, and we don't teach people to be true to themselves.
Yeah,
we teach them to chase success and money and stuff.
When I want my kids to be happy, I want them to have a life that they love. And I hope that their education, how we set this up, helps them. Yeah. So here's some tips for encouraging. We're going to end up going long, but
that's okay.
We've had a great conversation. Here's some tips for encouraging independent learners. One, to provide your student an opportunity to self-monitor. Sometimes when you're homeschooling them, they want you right there. That's actually probably not the best thing for them. It's okay if you have to get up and do some laundry, or if you have to clean the house or whatever, as long as they know you're there to help them when they need it. I think that's helpful for them to have to kind of do some of these things on their own. You can say phrases like, "Oh, it looks like you got this down, you continue on and I'll be back to check on your work." I mean, that kind of thing. Use questions as a scaffolding for independent learning. Always be, did I miss that one slide? Maybe it's on another one, but, always have that curiosity and not, be curious, not furious. So let's get that mantra going. Be curious, not furious. And as a parent, constantly try to be thinking of open-ended questions. I'm horrible at that, by the way, but try to always be using questions as scaffolding. Offer to model behaviors for them. Hopefully you're doing some kind of learning yourself, and that they're seeing that, oh, we continue this all throughout our life. Develop communication that is that the language is focused on learning. I thought it was interesting talking to Dustin before we even started that, as he has started to homeschool his kids, everything becomes a conversation all of a sudden about learning, and they're learning these things together. And I think that's so just, it's going to make an amazing family culture for you as well. Provide positive feedback. Little kids especially need that. They need to be praised and encouraged on things that they're doing. Encourage collaboration among your others, with all of your kids together. Encourage them to help one another. Give kids choices and encourage them to set their own learning goals. I think, one of the biggest things we can do is giving our kids choices and letting them learn from those things. Involve kids in your lesson planning, get their input about what they want to do. And then number 9, I didn't realize I was doing this until my kids got older. Really encourage reflection on learning, and journaling is very important for independent learning. We're going to move into schooling with babies and toddlers and preschoolers. And like I said, I did the gamut of this. I was pregnant with my daughter when I started schooling my oldest one. And then, so we went through this whole thing. So these are some tips to take advantage of nap time, I think is really important.
Wait, does that mean for baby or for me? Because I would like nap time.
Yeah.
Which one? Yeah. I'm not sure.
I have gotten to the point where if I needed a nap, I would put on a half an hour show and I'd say, "Mommy is tired. Wake me when the show is over," and they were more than happy to do that. So it is. But yeah, take advantage of nap time for you or for your kids.
Yeah.
Try baby wearing. I wish I would have done this with my daughter, but it's pretty popular. It becomes pretty popular to use, one of those slings. And I think it's so important to have them close, have them part of it, but try baby wearing. Create a baby and toddler proof area for schooling. And the way that I did this is I had lots of little boxes and stuff that were down low for them, that were filled with all kinds of things just for them, to make them feel part of it. And, but they could play with those things, and we could put the things that the kids really cared about kind of up high. Involve your younger siblings. When I first started doing this with my kids, my dad saw my second boy starting to learn, and he's like, "Well, you got to put him in another room." And I'm like, "Why would I do that?" He was enjoying it just as much as anybody. Most of my kids were early readers because they were surrounded by all of this all the time. So involve them, and you'll get less fuss from them because they just want to be part of whatever's going on. I always encourage to spend time with those little ones first, get them going on something, get them, excited about some of their own things, and then, turn and help your other kids. So take turns between your little kids and your older kids. Utilize electronics. I know this is not a popular thing to say because, but there are a lot of great games and stuff for kids to learn. This was my youngest when he was probably 3 or 4. They had some great, the school that I was in had some great preschool stories to listen to that he would listen to often. Have school-only activities just for little ones. Like I said, they really want to be part of it, so make them part of it. Find books for them and different things for them as well, because they want to be just like their older siblings, and so they want to be part of it. They want their own school. They want to feel like they're part of that. I threw this slide in here because I really feel like some of the ways that we can help kind of balance that is also working with our older children. Be sure to teach them personal goal setting and EDGE method approach. Let them find their own answers, I think is really critical. Work with them and give them mentoring opportunities for younger children. It teaches them a lot of leadership skills. They also learn how to be empathetic to little kids if they're teaching them. Use journaling and note taking. Teach them, like, if you don't know an answer, let's move on to the next one. Write it down where you're struggling, and when I come back to you, you'll have your notes right there, and we'll be able to help you with those things. Give older kids household responsibilities. This takes everything that you as a parent, sometimes you're everything. You're cleaning the house, you're making the dinner, you're also schooling your kids. Give them as much responsibility as you can. We've talked about this before, how important those life skills are, and it really helps them feel part of the family too. Give them brain breaks and some flexibility. If you have a fussy kid, let them go have a a time when they can play or they can do something on their own, and then kind of be sure to try to pull them back to that. But those brain breaks are really important. We talked about that last time. And utilize electronics. Sometimes with kids, that's older kids, that's scarier because sometimes kids have questions. The internet is not the best place to ask, but still utilize, like I said, I utilize Khan's Academy for my daughter today. Use community as much as you can. Find mentors for your kids. This is an example of my dad teaching my son how to weld. I think if we could do that more often, we could have older people working with younger people. It would help our world in so many ways. The family, this homeschooling is a lifestyle, and I hope we can kind of move out, because homeschooling kind of has, everyone feels like it's, I don't know, it has bad connotations.
Just for weirdos or something. But I think we're moving away from that as a society, especially in COVID era.
Yeah. And if we call it homeschooling, all of a sudden we think, well, if it's schooling, we have to do it like I've seen in public school. No, this is a family learning opportunity. It's a lifestyle. You're more successful when you have that mindset of family learning, that we're all learning together, that you're there learning something alongside your kids as well. It's a really noisy, messy business. That's why a lot of people don't want to do it, because your children are always underfoot and you don't ever get that maybe time away from them. But it's also something, as you're working through the mess, you learn a lot of valuable communication skills with your kids and with yourself and your family. And I think it creates stronger family bonds for sure. Be gentle with yourself and everyone else. I've had this slide before that our children are holy sandpaper, but they really can help us be better people and parents if we let them be. And then find joy in the process. This quote here, John Holt is kind of the father of homeschooling. He's the one, another teacher that's like, this isn't really working really well. And so he kind of helped create this. It was kind of a hippie movement, what he was trying to do. But he said, if I had to make a general rule for living and working with children, it would be this: be wary of saying or doing anything to a child that you would not do to another adult whose good opinion and affection you have valued. I'm hoping as we do these courses that we're also helping to strengthen families, because I think that's the saddest part. I've said this over and over again too, that homeschooling is really just an extension of parenting, but it's an extension of parenting that many of us know nothing about. And we have to learn how to have those skills again. Started from the beginning with many of our courses. If you go back and watch the recordings, knowing your why is so important. And sometimes that's the only thing that helps you get through that messy, noisy business, is that you understand your why and why you're doing this. Because if we do that, it has the power to create amazing results. And I think I've showed you pictures of my family all the way through this, but I didn't mean for it to be a slideshow, but it's something that, you can work towards having a great family culture for sure. Okay, so I don't know if we have any questions.
Well, we don't, but I just want to,
Okay.
I know I talk a lot, but I've been trying to, I've been struggling with this, not struggling, or I guess I've just been learning it bit by bit, but I guess I would emphasize something that you kind of said. You got to create a culture of learning in your house, and look for opportunities to teach everywhere, and to understand that might mean that a task takes more time, that it is, let me give you another story. I just like stories a lot.
I like your stories.
So earlier this week or last week, my son, he popped a tube on his bike. He has a little mountain bike or whatever. And so he's like, Dad, can you change out the tires? I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. Let's do it. So I got the stuff, and then I was like, you know what? my son needs to know how to deal with bikes. I mean, he is gonna have his whole bike throughout his life, and maybe in college or whatever. We're gonna start working on bikes, and my 6-year-old too. I was like, let's do this. So instead of, I mean, as a dad, like I know how to replace the tube and fix a tube
And
and
it
patch
probably
a
been
tube.
faster
Yeah, it
for
would
you
have
have
been
to
way faster. But
Yeah.
instead, I was like, okay, let's do this. So I filled up the bathtub. I took the tubes out of the bike and I put them in the bathtub. And I said, hey guys, let's see what's wrong with this. Actually, I was sitting in the bathtub, so it's kind of, or not in the bathtub. Well, that would be weird. That would be so weird. Oh my gosh, strike that from the record. But I was sitting in the bathroom and I called my kids in. I was like, hey guys, we're gonna fix these tubes. Do you guys understand? Do you guys know how we might be able to find a hole? They're like, well, we could look at the tubes. I'm like, okay, give that a try, see how that works. And they're like, Dad, this isn't working. I can't find the hole. I'm like, I know. so then I was like, any ideas how we might be able to find the hole? They're like, no. And then they kind of look around and they're like, oh, we could put it in the water and then we could find the hole. So that's what we did. And it took like probably 3 times as long for me to get this task done, but we did it. And they learned how to start identifying holes in their tubes. And like, and again, you are making an investment in yourself and in your family by spending more time. And it's again, we're all starved for time because we've all got so much going on, but my sense is if we make the investment now, our kids will be grittier, they'll be more self-directed, and eventually they'll say thank you for making me do the hard stuff the monotonous stuff that maybe I didn't want to do when I was a kid, you know?
Those are the experiences that they're going to remember too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to love the fact that you brought them into the bathroom and you showed them how to do that and all that stuff. But yeah, I heard this quote once that it's easier to pick up a sock than to teach a kid to pick up a sock. But at the same time, it's so important that they learn how to pick up their sock. You know, it's important that you don't do those things for them, that you let them learn with you, use that edge method, you know, that I'm talking. And like I said, we will discuss that more in detail, but it's a great way to start helping to create that self-directed learning. I hope you join us next week. We're going to have another live class Wednesday, October 28th. And I've been fiddling with this one a bit because I was looking at the socialization one. That's one of my favorite classes to teach, by the way. And it was like way back in November. So this lesson here that we're going to talk about is keeping that momentum rolling, because we're going to hit probably next month is when people start hitting that school slump, when they're like, I can't do this any longer. You know, you've been going a few months, it's wearing on you. So I don't know, Dustin, should I do that or should I switch to the socialization? What do you think?
But I like what you've got here. I think
Okay.
I think this will work well because I think there are some people who may be even discouraged. So yeah, I think keep it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about creating that environment for that self-motivated student again. We're going to talk about award systems that work, and then also expecting that school slump and what to do. I think for years I would find myself, it was always in November and in April, you hit a school slump. And each time I was like, I can't do this anymore. We're sending the kids to school, you know, whatever. And I mean, some parents don't really have a choice at this point, but I want you to be expecting that and then what to do for that as well. So
absolutely.
All right. Well,
thank you again for doing these classes, and we'll see everybody next week. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're both on Facebook. And what's the URL for your website and your podcast again?
It is theluminousmind.net. So theluminousmind.net. And like I said, I have a page there, and I always try to make sure it's at the top. I've got to go in and add some more recordings and stuff, so it's back up at the top. But you'll find all these recordings there. You can also join us on Empowered Learning 101 Facebook page. So look for that. Just Google that, and it will come up, and we'll post all that information there as well.
Very good. All right, Rebecca. Thank you so much for another wonderful class.
Thank you.